Hey, fellow mathers. Before we get into this episode, we want to share with you how you can get access to free content, professional learning that will keep your students engaged and doing the math that matters. Get ready to go to this link, mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge.
That's right. Registration is open for the free Math is Figureoutable Challenge that's starting May 15th and runs to the 17th at 7 p.m. Central. We're going to have 3 nights jam-packed with learning and routines that you can take straight to your classroom.
In these challenges, we have a great time. We do some math, talk about classroom experiences, give away super cool bonuses and prizes. You won't just walk away with routines that are naturally engaging and encourage your students to think mathematically. You'll also have a chance to win over $6,000 worth in prizes, including a few virtual PD sessions for your school. I'll be joined by my wonderful co-host Kim and special guest Jenna Labe.
You can register at mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge for a fantastic learning experience. That's mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. Now on to the show.
Hey, fellow mathematicians. Welcome to the podcast where math is figure-outable. I'm Pam.
And I'm Kim.
And you, Pam, don't laugh. And you found a place where math is not about memorizing and mimicking, waiting to be told or shown what to do, but it's about laughing and making sense of problems, noticing patterns, and reasoning using mathematical relationships. We can mentor students to think and reason like mathematicians. Not only are algorithms not particularly helpful in teaching mathematics, but y'all, just rotely repeating steps actually keep students from being the mathematicians they can be.
Listen, I don't know if people recognize or maybe have any way of knowing how much joking around we do prior to starting.
Before we hit
we're
the button.
laughing about something and Pam's like, go! And I was like, oh God, I'm still laughing.
Yeah,
It's
that's
good
kind of
fun.
why that
It's
was.
good fun.
Yep. We
Okay.
actually enjoy each other, which is kind of fun.
I mean,
right?
it's super fun.
Yeah.
So listen, I'm not going to read a review every single week, but it's been super
Why
fun.
not?
And
Yeah.
well, I know, but I'll be choosy, but it is really cool to think about how people are now thinking and sharing in
Y'all,
general.
it makes Kim's day, so keep
I mean,
doing it.
super fun.
It makes both of our days, but especially
it's exactly
Kim.
what we hope for, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's change
so
the world. Absolutely.
I chose one from Risa Reviewer, and the caption at the top says transformative, which is cool.
Aw.
These incredible women completely transformed my teaching. I knew that what I was doing in my math class was not meaningful, but I didn't know what to do about it. That's so insightful, right?
Yeah,
Like that's
yeah.
a struggle. I was fortunate enough to learn from them almost 9 years ago in their workshops and over several years. I'm so grateful for this podcast to continue my growth. And I just love feeling like they're still with me because they're wonderful humans. Thank you for all you do.
Wow.
Super cool. Super cool.
Risa Reviewer, that's
Yeah.
Awesome. Nice.
So thanks for listening. We
Aw.
plan to be here for a while, so don't go anywhere.
Bam.
So Pam, the other day, I don't know if I told you this, but I was working on something for Journey,
Okay.
the membership site, if the listeners don't know about that. And I called Sue up. Sue's amazing and wonderful and helps
She's
me
on our team.
brainstorm. Yeah,
Yep.
she's on our team.
Mhm.
And I said, hey, Sue, do you know how I think partners of 10 and 100 and 1,000 are like super critical to all we do? And we constantly talk about that with people. Do you think it's possible that I don't see square numbers in the same way because I don't own all the relationships up to 20 squared at my fingertips? And she was like, yeah. I was like, I mean, I have many of them, but I don't have them all.
Let's
like
maybe
16.
define. Yeah, let's define a square number. So 16
Okay.
is square because it's 4 times 4. So like 25 is square because it's 5 times 5. 144 is square because it's 12 times 12.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
And
cool.
so I, several of them between 13 and 20 I've got, but I was thinking about it and I said, Sue has mentioned to me before that she thinks that's really important. And I called her and I said, I don't know that I buy it, but talk to me more. And so then in the car one morning, I still wasn't buying it, but I asked Luke, my oldest, and I asked him the same question. And I said, do you think it's possible? Like I said, tell me the ones that you own. And it was pretty much the same ones as me.
Okay.
I was really wondering, he and I both could find the square numbers. I mean, using relationships, we could pretty easily figure 16 by 16. But I was just very curious in the grand scheme of all the things to own, are square numbers one of them? And I concluded that I don't know that I can make that judgment because I know that I don't fully own them. And I think I'd have to own them to be able to decide, was that worth in all of mathematics, was that worth me owning? I don't know,
Yeah,
it
it's
just was a moment for me that I had to really think about, is it possible that I didn't know them and so I couldn't judge? And I wonder if that's how people feel about the partners of 10, 100,000. You had that experience, right?
yeah. So let's maybe broaden the conversation because you'd brought up partners of 10, 100,000, and you brought up
Uh-huh.
square numbers. I had a similar experience where I was starting to early when I was experimenting in my kids' classrooms. I started to notice that doubles were important. Like
Yeah.
Kim, I was just doubling single digit numbers, and I was noticing how if you kind of knew the doubles of single digit numbers, you could work off of those for addition and subtraction.
Uh-huh.
And in the midst of that, I was doing all this professional development for TI with graphing calculators, and I said something about doubling. And this teacher, I'll never forget, it was an algebra 2 pre-cal workshop where I'm teaching them about graphing calculators, and this teacher said, "Oh yeah, doubles are super important, like double 75, double 35." And I was like, "What?" Like those were so off my radar.
Yeah.
I said, "Double 35 is important," and she goes, "Oh yeah, it shows up everywhere." In that moment, I had to have a kind of a similar, like I said, I literally said, it shows up nowhere. Like
Yeah.
I've never used double 35 in my life. And she kind of looked at, I don't think I said that out loud, but it was just kind of this back and forth a little bit. We were doing this pre-cal stuff, trig and whatever. And I had to dive in and double and have and like find halves of things and mess around until, oh my gosh, double 35 stuff shows up everywhere.
Yeah.
Like there are doubling is a thing that mathematicians do, but I couldn't see that
Yep.
until I started to play with it and own those relationships, and then I could see where they kind of appeared in life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Kim, we decided to both of us talk about those experiences a little bit because I just had, so very recently, had an experience that helped me, caused me to grapple with some of the language that I have been using because of the way it was heard by some of the participants in a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
And I called you up and I was like, "Kim, I'm really grappling with what just happened because some people in the workshop really very respectfully pushed back against some of what I was saying." And we decided that we would kind of carry on that conversation here on the podcast a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, just a short aside, we started this podcast in part because Sue, who you mentioned earlier, would sit in the car with us when we would go to presentations and workshops, and we would come back and you and I would beat out something that had happened at
Yeah.
the workshop, right? And Sue said, people would want to listen to this. And you and I were like, "What?"
I was like, no, nobody
Yeah.
wants to listen to us
Yeah.
talk.
Like we're just talking. She goes, "No, like you are creating knowledge right here between the two of you as you're beating this around. The two
Yeah.
of you are like figuring stuff out. You're clarifying your own understanding." And she said, "I'm finding it fascinating. Other people would want to listen to this. You guys should create a podcast." And it was part of the reason that we created a podcast.
Yeah.
So Sue, shout out to you. Thank you for pushing us
It's
to
all
have
your
these
fault, Sue.
conversations live. Yeah. So we thought that we would kind of have this conversation live. So let me tell you a little bit about what happened. Tell the listeners a little bit what happened. And Kim, I might fill in some more details that I told you the other day.
Okay.
So often in a first workshop with people, I will talk about a little bit of my history, how I kind of thought that math was about memorizing disconnected facts and mimicking rules and procedures. I waited till the teacher showed me what to do, and I now call that fake math. Well, later on in the presentation, one of the participants said, "I have a question." And I said, "Yep, yep. What's your question?" And this participant said, "I'm hurt a little." These aren't quite the words the person used, but it was something. The message I got was, "I'm kind of upset. I'm sad that you're calling the math I do fake." And I was like, "Oh, no, I'm not calling you fake." Like the person said, "I feel like I do things my own way, and I feel like you're calling me fake, that the way I do the way I'm." And I was like, "Oh no, it's not about it's not you. It's not about you. It's it's this perspective that the world kind of has, that in math class, here's what you do, and we're going to call that math. And what I suggest when I call things fake math is not in any way meant to be ugly towards a person at all. It's not me saying you're fake or you're Kim, help me. It's not about me being ugly to anybody.
Yeah.
It really is much more about me saying, "Oh, it's almost like the Matrix feel." Kim, did you ever see the movie The Matrix?
No.
So I think I only saw parts of it.
Okay.
We had this rated R thing in our family, so and I think it was rated R when it came out, and so I saw like some TV version parts of it or whatever. But I think I understand the story well enough that they're living their lives, and all of a sudden something happens. They take a pill. There's something about a pill. See, I didn't really see it, but all of a sudden they realize that the life they think they're living is a computer simulation. And really, they're all in these pods hooked up to all these tubes and wires and stuff. And their minds are playing this computer simulation. So there's this reality that they don't know about,
Hmm.
but and they think they're in reality. That's not like Keanu Reeves. I'm not dogging his character. I'm sure he has a name. I can't come up with his character's name right now. People are
Yeah.
like yelling. They're like, I can't believe you don't know this movie. All right, fine. I know it that well. I'm not dogging those characters. There's no way they could have known
Yeah.
that the universe was sort of playing a trick on them. I'm suggesting that nobody was. I'm sure in that movie there was some evil mastermind who created the false world. I'm not a conspiracy theorist saying that somebody is out there to fake everybody out. Not at all. I think that we somehow culturally got to a place where people said, this is math. Math is you
Yeah.
wait till I tell you what to do and you mimic what I tell you to do. And now you're doing math. And what I'm saying is, oh yeah, actually not. Like
Yes.
it's actually not that way at all.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit as you were talking, because I haven't seen the movie, but it's as if you've never been a hearing person, but for most of your life, people maybe have tried to tell you what it's like to hear, but then if you got some sort of hearing aid and you heard sound for the first time, it's like you have a new awareness in some way, but you couldn't have known what somebody was describing. And I feel like that's a little bit of the experience that you had. You had no way of knowing what you now describe as real math was, because nobody ever gave you that perspective. You had no experiences for what you describe as real math, because teachers kept telling you this is what math was. And
Well,
I
and I
would
kept getting
bet they
credit.
didn't.
I kept
Yeah.
getting credit for it, right? Like I got
Yeah.
good grades for doing that thing
Yeah.
because I can't say nobody tried. There were Mrs. Newbern tried.
Oh, they
Like
did.
I had a few instances where
Interesting.
people would say things like, Mrs. Newbern in eighth grade, we were multiplying binomials, the typical x plus 3 times x minus
Yeah.
2 and whatever. And she goes, you could use that to multiply whole numbers. And I
Interesting.
looked at her and I was like, why would you, if math to me meant
Yeah.
you have a way to get an answer, you get an answer, you get credit for that answer, why would I want another way? Like I get credit for the answer, I have a way, don't give me one more thing to rote memorize. That's how I
Yeah.
heard what she said. So like when you have a perspective, when you're inside that matrix world, there's no way you can see out of it, until you get a chance to shift your perspective.
Yeah, I was going to say, if somebody's telling you to do it, I don't think you can, but
You have
they're
to build the
providing
relationships.
experiences. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
you have to build the relationships to make it
yeah.
work. It's funny. It reminds me of another story. I'm feeling like I'm in middle school now that I'm remembering Mrs. Newbern. I'm thinking about Lowell Scott Junior High when I was there. I read a Ray Bradbury short story. I don't remember the name of it, but it was a short story by Ray Bradbury where I think he's on the moon or Mars or something. So it's an astronaut and in the situation he's in the room, but I don't remember too many details. I just remember the feeling at the end. I'll get there, but he's in the room and there he's reliving the day and how he was hanging out with his brother or his dad or somebody in his family, and he lays down to go to sleep, and he's in the same room with his brother, I think, and they're astronauts, and so like he's reliving where they landed and all the things, and as he's going to sleep, he something strikes him and he's like, well, that's odd, that doesn't quite fit. So, some sort of thing that happened in the day. He's like, why was that doesn't, and then he kind of follows a train of thought. Well, then that would mean, and then that would mean, and then that would mean, and oh my God. And then he realizes that actually everyone's been slaughtered. He's the only human
Oh,
alive. And the creature in the room with him is not his brother. It's and he opens his eyes and and he gets eaten by the Martian or something. I mean, it was like
okay.
horrible.
Wow.
So it was like this moment of like, I feel like that person had no control over, I mean, the Martians basically had sort of control. They had created this environment where he
Right.
felt like he was among the people that he knew. And so the point here isn't, I can't blame the astronaut. I can't blame the guy in the Matrix. There's no blame here. Like, if anybody knows Kim and me, we're not about blaming. We're really about empowering.
Yeah.
It's about saying, man, we now know that there's this whole universe of cool math that we invite you into. And I guess during this presentation I was just mentioning a minute ago, where this person pushed back, I've just been thinking about things I did differently in that presentation. Let me tell you one other thing that happened in the presentation that kind of, again, had me kind of reeling a little bit. Like, what did I say differently here? How is my message being heard? And so a different participant in the virtual workshop said, hey, I have a question. I had just been talking about additive reasoning and multiplicative reasoning, and how multiplicative reasoning is more sophisticated than additive reasoning. And I asked, how are you thinking about something like 7 times 8? And we had talked about that if you chunk 7 times 8 into multiplicative pieces, then that's more sophisticated than skip counting 7/8.
Mm-hmm.
Skip counting 7/8 is additive reasoning. And we want to think about something like 5/8 and 2 more 8s, or 7 sevens and 1 more 7, like these big chunks, that's more multiplicative reasoning. And this person said, well, I have a question. And I said, okay. And this person said, I'm a visual kinesthetic learner, which I'll come back to in just a minute. And so I needed other ways to learn multiplication facts. I couldn't learn multiplication facts the way other kids did. And so because I'm a visual kinesthetic learner, I needed other ways. And I said, with all sincerity, tell me more about those ways. What helped your visual kinestheticness of you? Which, again, I want to talk about in a sec, so don't let me forget. But what do you mean? What helped you? And this person said, stories. And I said, give me an example. This person kind of paused, and I said, you mean like 6 times 8, like the garden gate is made of 6, so it's 56? And this person kind of a little defensively said, yeah, I needed stories like that. Stories like that helped me learn the multiplication facts. I'm taking a deep breath. In that moment, where to even start? So respectfully, math teachers, math educators, parents, anybody out there, stories, like I just said, are not visual or kinesthetic. So that's a thing. Like, it's a memory technique. So I believe you if you say, I'm not a good memorizer. Oh, okay. That's a thing. Some of us have better talents in one thing than the other thing. Some of us don't have a talent for memorizing. I believe that you could say, I'm not a good memorizer. So if I need to memorize something, then boy, howdy, give me stories, or give me mnemonics, or give me rhymes, or let me sing it, or absolutely. And I have no problem with that. But that comes from a perspective of saying, when this person said, in order to learn multiplication facts, I needed stories. I'm inviting everybody to into the perspective that learning multiplication facts isn't about memorizing.
Right.
It's like we're in the Matrix, or we're in the astronaut's bedroom, where we're in this perspective of, oh, if I need that learning multiplication facts means I'm rote memorizing multiplication facts. Well, then, yeah, then do all the memory stuff. Absolutely. What we're suggesting is that's not the universe, that's an incorrect perspective. It's not your fault, but your teachers fed it to you.
Mm-hmm.
What if learning multiplication facts wasn't about that at all?
Mm-hmm.
What if learning multiplication facts was actually building your brain to think and reason multiplicatively, so you could use chunks, bigger and bigger chunks, to solve the problem?
Yeah.
Did I say what I mean there, Kim?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, not too terribly long ago, this comment came up in a journey leader group that we have, and
Our leader
Uh,
support group.
yeah, and so in that, Kathy Campbell, shout out to Kathy Campbell,
Yay,
was
Kathy.
talking about how she was working with a student on rounding, and the student had some trick, if you will, for rounding tens,
Mhm.
but then really was having difficulty with rounding hundreds because they weren't able to transfer their thinking about the whatever they came up with to round tens to round to hundreds. And my comment back to her was, and yeah, like that person, that child thought of rounding tens as completely different than rounding to hundreds. And there was no connection between the two. And so it was an experience where we got to talk about that is exactly what it means to have isolated, disconnected things to memorize. And if it's true that you don't make any connections between something that I feel like is pretty obvious, like tens to hundreds, because that's my worldview, then imagine all the things that we have to think about in math as just like the stack upon stack of things to memorize.
Mm.
They didn't see any connection between rounding in general and what the point of rounding is. And so it was just a moment we talked about a little bit that I'm thinking about right now. That,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
that's a good connection.
if you think of 7 times 8 is a fact to memorize, then you're not thinking about the relationship of 70 times 8 or 7 times 80.
Yeah, so interesting. When that person brought up I'm a visual kinesthetic learner, then
Yeah.
the person next to that person, so I often have people when I do virtual PD, we'll have them be two to a device. That
Uh-huh.
way I can call on them, but I can also let them have partner conversation. And the partner said, yeah, like I actually use 6 times 7 to find 7 times 8, which I thought was interesting. I don't hear
Huh.
that one very often.
Yeah.
6 times 7 to find 7 times 8. And I said, great. How do you use 6 times 7? And he said, yeah, for whatever reason, I just know 6 times 7 is 42. And so I said, okay, well, how do you get to, so that was thinking about 6 sevens, and he's trying to find 8 sevens. And he said, so I know I need 2 more 7s, and then I would count on by ones. So remember, I had just helped juxtapose counting strategies, additive thinking, multiplicative thinking. And so this person was kind of like, and then I count by ones. And I said, so you're at 42, you know that one for whatever reason, you just 6 times 7 sticks and you got 42. And then you literally go 43, 44, 45, 46. And he's like, yeah. And I said, okay. So I said, so you're adding 42 and 7. I'm kind of curious. Do you know 2 and 7? And this person said, no. So I've got to count on by ones. Now I wish I didn't at the moment. I wish I would have said, do you know 7 and 2?
I think that's what you just said. So,
Oh, I didn't say 2 and 7.
oh, yeah, you did.
So
I thought you asked
Well, so I
42 and
wanted to
7.
switch it. I wanted to flip the order a little bit.
Okay.
So this person said 42, 43, 44, 40, and literally counted up to 49. And then I decided to kind of let it go at that point. I said, okay, so now you're at 49. You're going to add another 7. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, how would you do that? Well, I would count by ones. And I said, so I'm curious. So 49, do it for me. And he said 50. And I said, okay, so you just added 1 to 49 and you got to 50. How much more do you have to add? And he said 6. And I said, so just, I know you could count by ones from there. And he's like, yeah, that's what I would do. I would count by ones. And I said, I'm just super curious. Now that you're at 50 and you know you have 6 more, do you know 50 and 6? And I'm writing right now because when I present, I have my iPad, I'm sharing my iPad. And so on the paper, I had written 50 and a jump of 6. And I said, do you know 50 and 6? And he looked up and he goes, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's just 56.
Mm-hmm.
So what I didn't say in that moment, because I'll be honest, emotions were kind of hot. We were actually at the end of the time. I tried to spend a minute to say, I'm not saying you're fake. I'm not saying that you're unsophisticated. I'm not saying, all of the words I had just used to describe the kinds of thinking wasn't me trying to be ugly towards people at all. It's really more me trying to say, oh, that's the way you're thinking. Do you know you can grow from there?
Mm-hmm.
There are other ways you could actually like be empowered to think more sophisticatedly if you're interested. Like once you added that 49 to 50, bam, you could just think about the rest of that. We could grow your additive reasoning, and once you're reasoning additively more, we could grow your multiplicative reasoning. And I think actually relatively quickly, once you know it's a thing. Like
Yeah.
it's opening the universe. It's realizing you're on Mars with the Martians. That's maybe not the best one. It's realizing you're in, because you don't want the Martian to eat you, but you're in the matrix, realizing what reality actually is.
Yeah.
When you realize what reality actually is, now you have choices. Now you can choose. Like I'm just going to submit. If you were the person who thought the only way I can do this is sort of less than, I need these things, everybody else somehow was able to get it differently than me, and I needed these other things. What if that's, if that was the universe? But what if the universe is actually different? What if the universe is actually where you actually can reason like a mathematician?
Yeah.
That's the world that we're trying to invite you into. God,
Yeah.
I hope I'm saying this well, that
Yeah. Well, I think I'm hearing that the perspective isn't, I don't want to say correct. The perspective is not complete. There's more to the story, maybe that this participant wasn't able to see based on what they have been taught.
Well, it's like you said earlier, you don't know if square
Yeah.
numbers are important because you don't own them, so
Yeah.
they don't appear for you. I didn't think
Yeah.
doubles were all that important because I didn't own them, and
Yeah.
so they didn't show up for me places. The day you said to me, Pam, I don't think you understand how important partners of 10, partners of 100 are, and I was like, yeah, and you go, no, you don't, no, clearly you don't, because there are opportunities where you could be using those relationships that you saw, Kim, that as we were doing workshops together, you saw that I was missing. That wasn't you looking at me. You weren't looking down on me. I don't think
No.
so. You
No,
weren't
no,
like
no, no.
shaking your finger at me going, "You idiot, you're such a dork.
Uh,
You're
no,
fake. You're
it was an opportunity, right? I love that you said that because it was an opportunity to use something that was within your grasp. You just didn't know it was a thing at that point.
I just didn't know it was a thing."
Yeah.
You opened the universe to go, no, like this is a thing. And I was like, that's a
Yeah.
thing? Well, now that I know that's a thing, I can do that thing.
Yeah.
Y'all, now that you know it's a thing, you can do that thing.
Yeah.
And we just empower all of us more and more. Please remember, I was the ultimate mimicker.
Yeah.
Like when I dove into the research and dove into my kids' classrooms, I kind of kid a little bit that it was a midlife crisis, but I mean, it kind of wasn't. Like I had built my self identity on the fact that I was the god of high school math. I
Yeah.
knew all the math, and I had to admit to myself, maybe there's this other universe of stuff that I don't know, but I can.
Yeah.
Like that was my saving grace. My saving grace was, if there is this other worldview that but I have access to it, and God, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like this is, I'm super intrigued, and it's okay for me to dive in now and open up my worldview, and wow, now I can open up everybody else's. Hey Kim, this reminds me, when we filmed our Building Powerful Proportional Reasoning workshop. So, we
Mhm.
have these online workshops and we film them in a 2-day live workshop, and then we cut it up in this really creative way, make these online workshops. When we filmed the proportional reasoning workshop, it's a little different than some of the others because the audience, how do I say this? They didn't know. They were going to a mandatory PD day in their district. And so
Oh,
it was kind of a communication mix up between me and the
yeah.
district. I thought the district had told the people they were coming to be filmed so they would know. The people showed up. They didn't know. A couple of
Oh,
people were
goodness.
kind of, yeah, it was a
Yeah.
little uncomfortable, but it was, in a way, it's one of the best ones we've done because boy, those people pushed back.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a workshop with only people who want to be there, then they're not going to, I mean, they still push back, and anyone who's seen any of our other workshops are like, oh, they were pushing back. It's just in this particular one, there was a set of teachers who just would not let me get away with anything. They're like, well, what
Yeah.
about these students? There was especially a group of special education teachers who were like, well, our students. What was fascinating to me was for all the times in that first day and a half, it was a 2-day, in the first day and a half that they would go, well, Pam, for our students, well, these students, by the end of that workshop, we have those teachers started to say, oh, like
Mhm.
this is maybe what our students can do. And I will never forget the gal right in the middle, just off to the left, who all of a sudden had this look on her face, and she started to, I did that. I did. I just, like, she was
Yeah.
just like breathing, and she goes, I just, and I was like, and you can too. And she goes, if I can do it, my students can do it. I'm like, this is, oh, I get what you mean. It like opened up her universe. And all of a sudden, a person who had been pushing back, well, my students can't, and, they struggle with, and they need these different things, and don't tell them, don't be mean to them. All of a sudden, she opened up her worldview to like, she could. And if that's what mathing meant, well, good heavens, she could do it. They could do it. Oh, that's what you mean. Like it's an amazing moment of, that's what we're trying to do. So y'all, if you've ever listened to any of our podcasts where you've come away going, God, like feeling less than, like we're calling you fake or calling you less sophisticated. No, please don't ever hear that that's what we're doing. We just now have a perspective of what's possible. And we just invite you into that world. We just invite you. There's just like, we want to empower you.
Yeah. I think if your perspective is, well, that's just the way I am. That's just the way it is. That's it. Can't do anything about it. You might be right, because it does take some willingness and some desire to see things different and to learn and grow. But it doesn't have to be that way, right?
Yeah.
We can all learn and grow and different paces, which is perfectly fine.
Yes, because we even Kim and I have different paces. Yeah. And there are times where I'm like, Kim, hang on. Back that up, slow that down.
And the opposite is true, depending on the conversation that we're having, right?
For sure. We have different experiences. All right, so everybody, leave this podcast feeling empowered. And thank you for tuning in and teaching more and more real math. To find out more about the Math is Figureoutable movement, visit mathisfigureoutable.com. Let's keep spreading the word that math is figureoutable. Thank you for listening and making math more figureoutable.
To learn even more, make sure you register for our free challenge at mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. You are not going to want to miss the evenings of May 15th through 17th, starting at 7 p.m. Central.
Math teaching, go register now. That's mathisfigureoutable.com/challenge. Join us to make math more and more figureoutable. And if you can't join live, register and we'll send you access to the recordings. We'll see you there.